Okay. Hi, everyone. We'll just wait a couple of minutes. Maybe more people will join, and then we'll start. Okay, I think we can start now. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining the Genomic AI Network and Alan Turing Institute webinar series. So in this series, we explore how AI is shaping the future of genomics. Today's session focuses on how large language models can be used to create clear and accessible information guides for people affected by rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. So we are delighted to be joined by three speakers today. Pawan Prabhat from Short Hills AI, Dr. Sid Banka, Professor of Genomic Medicine and Rare Diseases at the University of Manchester, and Dr. Claire Andersen from Unique, which is a charity dedicated to providing clear and supporting information for families affected by rare genetic conditions. And for those in audience, if you have questions during the sessions, please add them to the Q&A sections rather than the chat, so we can make sure we are picking them up later and then we can answer them. So thank you all for being here. I'll now hand over to Dr. Sid, Claire, and Pawan to tell us more about their work.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Can you see my slides? Great. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much to Alex, Poppy, and Anna Maria for inviting us to this webinar. I'm really excited, but there is a disclaimer to start with, which is that this is an ongoing project, so it's not yet complete. So in fact, I think presentations made at this stage are very useful because we're really looking to gain some feedback from what we've done, and hopefully there's an opportunity to improve how we're doing things. So rather than presenting it after everything is done, it's a really valuable exercise to do it at this stage. But yes, also cut us some slack because it's not a final finished product either. So as Anna Maria described, I'm going to talk about, or we are going to talk about how we are leveraging large language models to generate accessible information guides for rare genetic neurodevelopmental disorders. And although the focus is on neurodevelopmental disorders, of course, the principle really is wide and it can be applied to any genetic or rare disorder. So the story really starts with a meeting that I had with Sarah Wynn, who is CEO of Unique, and you'll find out more about her when Claire presents. So we had invited Sarah for a meeting in Manchester, and we were having this a meal at a very nice small little Korean joint next to our hospital, and we were chatting about lots of things, and one of the things that Sarah said was the issue around generating, scaling up-to-date, accessible patient information guides, which is a challenge which I'm sure many of you would recognize and identify with. So I am, as Anna Maria said, I'm a clinical geneticist, but we'd also established recently, just around that meeting, just before that meeting happened, we established a Manchester Rare Condition Center. So what I'll do next is just describe a little bit more about what we are and then I'll hand over to Claire to describe UNIQ as well for those who may not be fully aware of what the two organizations do. So Manchester Rare Conditions Centre is a virtual platform that's been set up to improve lives of people living with rare conditions. And this is on a background of quite a comprehensive, well-established, rich ecosystem that we have in Manchester, both from a hospital point of view, from a clinical point of view, but also from research, the advocacy work that many of our people do here, and also around education and training. And it's a partnership between the NHS Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust, the University of Manchester, but also some other higher educational institutes such as the Manchester Metropolitan University. Also, we've got quite good infrastructure around rare diseases with Manchester Biomedical Research Centre, Manchester Clinical Research Facility. Then there is a Health Innovation Manchester, which focuses on having innovation derived from research that is being done in Manchester. And then there's also quite a strong patient-public partnership group, which is called the Vocal. So what we do, and I can speak quite a lot about this, but I'll just limit myself to this single slide describing what Manchester Rare Conditions Centre does. So we're really centered around patient needs. So we've established a dedicated rare disease PPI group, which we've called We Are Rare, and that is at the heart of everything that we do. Then all the work that we undertake is divided into 4 themes. So one is clinical and diagnostics. Second is around research and innovation. Third is around education and training. And one of the most important aspects of our work is around engagement and advocacy. And there are a number of partners that we have, which I've listed, but I'm not going to talk about all of them. But I would highlight UNIQ, who are quite relevant to this talk, but also I'm sure many of you would be aware of Beacon, and I've already talked about Vocal as an important group. So that's what we are, and I'm going to hand over to Claire to talk about UNIQ next.
Thank you, Sid. So I hope some of you are aware of UNIQ already, but for those of you who aren't, if we just have the next slide. Wonderful. So UNIQ is a charity that was established just over 40 years ago. And initially we were the Trisomy 9 support group, but we've since expanded massively to become an umbrella organisation for all individuals and families affected by a rare chromosome or gene disorder associated with developmental delay and or intellectual disability. And I should say that I personally became involved with UNIQ about 10 years ago when my niece Tilly was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition called tetrasomy 9p. And my sister was desperate for information and support. And a paediatrician friend recommended she contact UNIQ, and they were able to really help her out. So I have a background in genetics and as a research scientist. So initially I volunteered for UNIQ, helping produce guides. And then I've worked for UNIQ for the last probably 7 years now as part of our small scientific communications team. Next. So as one of many support groups and charities representing the rare disease community, our mission is to inform, support and alleviate the isolation of anyone affected by a rare chromosome or gene disorder and to raise public awareness of these conditions. Next, please. So we have grown to have over 35,000 members, and when I checked yesterday, that they were represented in 137 different countries. Approximately 40% of our members are based in the UK, and we sign up between 150 and 200 new families every month. Next, please. So I should say that UNIQ membership is free to everybody. A crucial part of the work we do is in information and signposting. So we have the Information Guides project, and we produce information guides to specific genetic conditions, but also practical guides that cover day-to-day living aspects of living with these conditions. We also have a regular magazine and e-newsletter update. And crucially, we are a sort of only a small charity. So although we try to represent as many conditions as possible, where we know that there is another conditions specific support group out there who could provide better help to our families, we will always signpost them to them as well. Next. But equally importantly is the emotional support that we provide. So we have telephone and email support lines, as well as social media channels like a Facebook page. And those are really crucial for more peer-to-peer support between our members. We also are able to provide the contact details to other member families who may have the same condition, or they may live nearby and are going through very similar experiences. And we find that our families really like to connect with other families. We run family days and also events such as webinars and Q&As with experts, and we're really expanding this at the moment. So we invite people like Sid along to either come to a family day and answer our family's questions, and sort of really improve networking between clinicians, researchers and families. And really, we just hope to provide a sense of community and belonging through the good times and bad. And I should say that this is what we offer to families, but the work we do with professionals is equally important. So we participate in national and international research projects. We also campaign alongside other support groups like Genetic Alliance UK, Syndrome Without a Name, to really present the views of families to decision and policy makers. And we also regularly hold awareness-raising presentations and give teaching sessions to a really diverse range of professionals, including medical students. Next. So one of the really important aspects of the work we do, and crucial to this project in particular, is our Unique Guides project. And this was launched just over 20 years ago. And at the time, there was really very little information available to family about these rare genetic conditions. And if there was information, it was often quite worst case scenario focused, or it would be written in quite complex medical terms that really weren't easily accessible to families. So we launched the guide project, and we've now produced over 300 guides to genetic conditions, including over 80 to single gene conditions. And these are developed in collaborations with clinicians and academic experts. So they might help with writing. We've recently produced a really nice, easy to use, unique template, which makes it very easy for clinicians to help us write a guide. So if anyone is interested, please do get in contact. Our guides are always reviewed by at least one, usually two experts. So they are a trusted source of information for families and professionals. And also, we've set up some really great collaborations to have our guides translated. We either ask clinicians to maybe translate the guide into their mother tongue, or to perhaps review the guide once it's been translated by a lay person. And I think equally importantly is these other guides we produce. So we have practical guides, and these are really useful with or without a diagnosis. And these practical guides are to things such as feeding, sleep, education, carers' well-being. Here there's one telling your child or their sibling about a rare genetic diagnosis. And I would encourage people to look on our website for these too, because they are really vital subjects and elements of life that affect our members. We've started to produce easy read versions of our guides to make the work we do even more accessible. And we've launched this really lovely project where we produce My Chromosome or Gene Story booklets. And these are aimed at the children who are affected, or perhaps their siblings or friends, to tell them a little bit more about their genetic change. Next. So in terms of how families make use of our guides, they provide validation of the existence of the disorder. They validate families' concerns, which may have been dismissed or overlooked. They really help families know that they're not alone, and give recognition to shared experiences and symptoms. They provide so much information about what the condition might mean, and what to look out for. So they provide information on not just medical concerns, but also things like education, behaviour. As our sort of members are getting older, more and more we're able to add information about puberty and adulthood. And crucially, they contain testimonies and tips from families actually living with these conditions, passing them on to other families. And I think that's what really makes our guides unique. They're also used by families for tribunals and in panels, maybe to gain access to specific educational settings. And we know that professionals, clinicians, genetic counsellors also make use of our guides when counselling their families. So I think I'm going to hand back to Sid now.
Thank you, Claire. And of course, a lot of us would be aware of all the amazing work that the Unique team does. But I must say, Claire, as far as I know, it's a really small team. So it may appear as if there's a whole army of individuals working behind that, but actually just a few individuals in Unique team. And that means that although as a clinician, as a doctor myself, I've benefited quite a lot from using Unique information guides for my patients, there is a challenge there. And the challenge is that even just talking about neurodevelopmental disorders, there are approximately somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 neurodevelopmental disorders. And of course, generating information guides for all of them is really challenging. In fact, the guides which are already existing there, keeping them up to date would be quite difficult as well. So those are the challenges which are mentioned here on the slide, which is basically it's quite a lot of effort that goes into there. You need field specialists to be able to curate these. And then, of course, the problem around scalability is also there. So that prompted us to ask at that meeting in Seoul, Kimchi, was can we use LLMs to create information guides on rare genetic conditions from a vast body of medical literature? And it was just coincidental because just the day before I was having a discussion with Pawan, with whom we were working on something else, and we were talking about LLMs, and this was probably just before when ChatGPT exploded, really. So we then were able to obtain some funding from our Northwest GMSA, and we set up essentially a proof of concept project. And then the current, and so we completed that, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. And then we've now moved on to demonstrate that this can be scaled up. And in future, we hope to be able to make it a production as well. So let me first talk about the setup stage and the proof of concept stage that we did. That was in 2023, 2023, I think. Yeah, so it took us about a year to obtain funding, etc. So the first stage had 3 sub-stages. So we wanted to first establish a training model and then obtain some feedback and fine-tune that model and then generate one single new unique information guide. So, and we intended to do all of this in 1 year, which we did. So I'm going to hand over to Pawan to talk about the technicalities of it, how the model was established, what were the feedback and tuning that was done, and how that was used to generate a new unique information guide. Over to you, Pawan.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks, Claire, for setting up the stage. And thanks, everyone, for being here. So before I talk more about this solution, just wanted to set up some context as to how I took this project. And So essentially, Short Hills was started in 2018 in Short Hills, New Jersey, and that's where the name comes. And since that time, we were trying to build an LLM of our own to read all the product reviews that you see on Amazon or Walmart or any other place. And so we were already dealing with lots and lots of text data. And we realized that, okay, using AI or LLM to make sense of reviews is a tough thing. And when, of course, when Siddharth, talked about unique, I mean, two thoughts came to my mind. The first was, okay, it's tough. The second was, let's do some good, instead of trying to make people shop more, let's try to do some real good work for a change, as a professional company. And both was, I think, one of the best things that we did. Luckily, we were buying GPUs since 2018, like in a garage to set up a machine and do that. And we thought it was a very, very good problem statement and something good that we can do. So based on that, we really jumped into it. And in all vain, I told Siddharth, okay, we should be able to fix this in 3 months, 6 months. And Siddharth and Claire was, okay, fine, let's see where we go. And I must admit, it was one of the most challenging works that we have done. And I'll try to take you through it in a slightly simplistic way. But before I move to the next slide, just wanted to let everybody know that even though AI has lots of potential, lots of capabilities, uh, it is really, really far away from experts who have spent years into their fields. It will, I think, definitely shine light on people who have really not put in enough grunt work, but people who have worked on a subject, they still know much, much more than AI. AI is good for uh, assimilating, summarizing lots of data, but when it comes to making sense, it still has its shortfall. So with that context in mind, let's try to see how we try to go about it. Yeah. In a very broad uh, way, one can see the whole process uh, in mostly two steps, right? The step one, which is the most critical step, is about selecting the real. So for example, let us try to compare this with how a Google search would work. We throw something on Google, any search. Google will look at all the resources it has seen on the web, the good ones, the bad ones, the ugly ones. It will try to come out with some kind of report, some kind of summary, and frankly, you don't know what has gone into making that report or that whole document. The same is true even for all our OpenAI or Chat GPT or Gemini and all of them. If you ask them for something, they'll do a good job, I would say, but still they do the same. They will look at everything, even if it is spurious. I mean, it has not been vetted by experts. So the way we are trying to solve this problem is, okay, we have somebody like Claire or Anna who knows the stuff, who know which papers, which documents are relevant. And in fact, we were trying to work on Kabuki syndrome, where I guess the team had around 140, 148 papers, which were somehow somewhat relevant in creating the guide. And these are all complex research papers. So eventually, if you look at it in a box kind of model, the idea is an expert who knows the subject pretty well. They spend time, try to figure out which are the most relevant research papers or any kind of document or content. We feed it to an engine, and then we try to turn some levers. Okay, these are the kind of questions I want to answer. These are the kind of symptoms or topics I want to see. And then we let an AI engine do the job, throw out some stuff. Again, Claire takes a look, verifies it, validates it, because there are already documents which have been uploaded. There are chunks of documents which have been highlighted. The process of validation becomes easier. And then we try to churn it out in lucid English, in plain language, for families or experts. So that's the fundamental idea. There are a couple of terms that you're seeing, I mean, one of them, I mean, two of them are very popular. One is LLM, a large language model, and second is retrieval process, where people might have heard the term called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So I'll try to take you through this again in one more slide down the line, the one which I said towards the end. But let us try to look at the workflow in more detail, just to give a sense as to how in how we expect this to work. So if you look at step one, in step one, somebody who really wants to generate a new guide would essentially try to first select the right documents. Now, there was a plan even to let AI select the documents, and we can still go for it. But I guess this might not be the best way to go about it. And that's what the team also suggested. And then we said, okay, let's keep the controlling levers with us and try to see how best we can, use AI along with an expert to generate the guides. So the first step would be to upload the right documents which we think are most relevant. And then in step two, we look at the concerns which we are most interested in. Now, to start with, we have been able to, create a list of 29 concerns, and we can add some concerns if required. So once you've selected the documents where we know the concerns we are looking for, and then we look at the queries, and you can see some of that in step number 3. So now we are saying, okay, fine, these are the concerns I am looking at. These are the queries I want to look at, right? And then once we run it through the engine, and through RAG pipelines, we are able to look at the relevant chunks of information from those hundreds of documents which have been laid out to you. And now comes the real thing. If you really go to OpenAI or Gemini or any such model, they will never show you the chunks that they've been using. They will never show you the queries they've been writing from the backend or things they've been doing at the backend. Now we are saying, let us try to get the more control, let us get the full control in the hands of the researcher. Let us try to lay down the chunks which are actually being used in the final guide. Now that also helps us in getting the citations in place if we really want to, cross check again. And once we do this, eventually we are able to get a guide using an LLM. So that's the kind of workflow we envisaged along with the team. And luckily we were able to build it, wherein in all the processes, like step number 2 or step number 3, or selecting the chunks, adding some more chunks, we have full control. So it's more or less an AI assisted guide generation. We will not leave this to AI to generate such an important document for a patient or a family, because all said and done, and there are countless examples, AIs do hallucinate, they do give wrong answers, they do create things up, make up things on their own. So that was, I think, one of the very primary concern while making this whole workflow, and how do we create these guides. Yeah, start the next one. For those of you who are slightly tech oriented, let me steal a couple of minutes here again and try to talk about how things are slightly tricky over here and how we iterated. So I think the first part would be parsing. So document upload was standard. We were able to handle that, any tech company. When it comes to parsing, the majority of documents uh, which are required for any guide or any such work are PDF files. Now, if we all look back at our experience with OpenAI or LLMs in general, they're extremely good when it comes to reading novels or textual data in paragraphs. It's easy. But what do you do if there are 2, 3 columns? What do you do if you've got tables? What do you do if tables are connected to one another? These are really problematic. As a human being, we might be able to read those files PDF easily, but when it comes to reading a table, extracting data, it becomes impossible. So over there, we had to do a lot of iteration, and right now we are reasonably settled at Docling, which is an open source tool from IBM, and it works well for us. I'm sure uh, something new will come up, something must be lurking around the corner, and very soon we might be using that as well. But I'm just trying to give you a sense how things are essentially working. First, we are parsing the documents, which is a super tough problem to solve. Then comes the second part. Okay, fine. You have parsed the documents, you have got the headings, subheadings right. This tool does the job for you. How do you break it into different chunks of text? How do you really break it into chunks? So initially, when chunking started, it was more about a fixed length chunks, 500 words, so much and so. Then we went into semantic chunks, which is fine, go up to whole paragraph, whole pages. And then you try to look at, okay, fine, how do I ensure the continuity of the paragraphs in different pages, page breaks? So we started using, chunks, and we essentially settled on hybrid chunking, which is a mix of keyword chunking versus whole semantic chunking. Again, just trying to keep it simple. Once you have done this, then of course, once you've got the text paragraphs of different sizes, which have been figured out, intelligently, then we convert all of them into vectors, that's into numbers. Now these are required because when we file a new query, okay, that find me something according to my template, those queries are matched with these vectors or these numbers which are representation of those paragraphs. Again, it's a very standard technique called vectorization. Right now, we are using MLM6 L6 V2, and we are using Viviate to store all our uh, embeddings. And once you have done this, things slightly become different. Then we start going for chunk retrieval when we do a search. And eventually, we are using different kind of LLMs to uh, collate the final guide. What we have found right now is that Gemini Pro 2.5 works the best, and it is invoked only towards the end, where all the heavy lifting in terms of finding the right chunks and documents have been done. And to give you that context, if a unique guide is around 15 to 20 pages, right, and we are uploading 100 research papers, which will add up to maybe 3,000 or 2,000 pages, right? I think the first order of the day is to come down to those 20, 30, 40 meaningful pages from where an LLM can synthesize all the information without losing the context. Just like a human being beyond a point, an LLM would get confused. So this, in some sense, is the tech flow. I mean, there are more gory details, lying underneath, but this is in a broad way. This is how the tech flows around this. And it might look simplistic, but it took us a lot of time um, and fine tuning to get to this. And as I said in the beginning, in all my vein, I had told Siddharth, okay, 6 months is what we will crack. And the good part is we're seeing how good and how difficult this problem has been. And I think right now we are able to get around to 95 to 98% accuracy. And Claire would have the final say on this. Um, and for single gene, okay. And just to conclude this, sorry, Siddharth, I've taken more airtime than I was supposed to, but just trying to quickly go through this. Uh, there are some advantages of using a very specific framework like the one which we have developed in collaboration with Unique in Manchester, Siddharth's team. Um, and of course, all of this is over here, and I'll not go through them one by one. Uh, but this is the general sense. I think the having full control on every part of it is very critical in creating such a guide. There are provisions for citations, as you can see in point number 2. There are angles about consistency where, because we control the prompts fully, we control the chunks fully, the templates are standardized, we can still get very consistent output from the LLM. There will be some, of course, little bit changes here and there, but not much. And I think overall, and there is a slide, I think, regarding this as well, somewhere down the line, where it is more like human gets in first, AI steps in, does some work for the human being, an expert. Again, the human validates that, checks that, looks if it is okay, gives next set of instructions and tasks to the AI model, and it goes on. So it's a mix of, okay, me first, your turn, my turn, and I think that is how this whole thing has really been working, and that's how I think it will work. Little bit here and there, but that's the general idea. So I think this is what I just wanted to say about this part. Over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you very much, Pawan. That was actually pretty cool because I've not really seen the whole technical bits in the background. So I really enjoyed that. I think the next slide is over to Claire.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. Yeah, so as Sid and Pawan said, we actually did complete within a year that first proof of concept stage. And this spring, we were ready to move on to the next stage, so scaling up. So in May, we advertised via our website, social media posts, but also at scientific meetings that clinicians might attend, and also newsletters they receive. The project, and we wanted to recruit expert clinicians to lead the development of between 5 and 10 new unique information guides. So we did this by using an online form, and we asked the person or the clinician nominating the condition to give us some information about, say, the number of available publications, whether there was a Gene Reviews article or other large cohort articles had been published, and also to give us the main clinical features. And that was completed by the beginning of June. Next slide. So we received 29 applications in total. Approximately half of these were from UK-based clinicians, but we also got responses from India, Australia, Hong Kong, Norway, and the US. And so I think that really demonstrates there's definitely an international interest in the potential of this project and what it might mean. We had to reject 14 applications in total, either because these were not unique conditions, so they didn't include intellectual disability or developmental delay as a feature, or because actually we already had a unique guide to that condition or one was in progress. So you can see these are the 15 applications that went forward to the next stage. Next slide, thank you. And I think, as Pawan really highlighted, this is very much going to still involve human experts working alongside AI. So this is kind of an overview, and this is actually the overview we provided of the project to the clinicians who took part. So as in step one, as a first step, we asked the clinicians to provide the PDFs that Pawan mentioned, and these were uploaded to a central Dropbox. And we asked them to really focus on clinical articles, so not sort of animal model related articles, nothing like that. We really were interested in the clinical side of these conditions. And as I said, we really are interested in large cohort studies, such as gene review articles. So then in step two, these were used to generate a scientific and medical summary using the LLM model that was generated by Shorthills in the first stage of the project. And now this is sort of where we are up to now. In step three, we sent these summaries back to the clinicians, and we asked them to review the summary for factual accuracy and scope. And we were really clear about the potential limitations of using AI, so the risk of hallucinations, the fact it might use hedging or ambiguous phrasing or inconsistent terminology, that it may omit rare presentations, and also even some important facts. So it's really vital that this is such a vital step that we need those clinical experts to verify this summary that was created by the LLM. We also sent a brief questionnaire, and we really wanted to gain some feedback from clinicians about the accuracy and comprehensiveness of the summary that they were sent, and also how easy it was to read, how comfortable they felt using AI. And these are all things I think would be crucial going forward to understand more about how well this project could work. I'd say, I think this morning, as of this morning, we've received, I think it's 5 completed reviews, and then the remaining 10 will come in by the end of the year, we think. And these will go on to steps 4, 5, and 6. So that will involve using AI to generate a sort of draft of a more unique style guide, so in accessible language. And we have a template, which I mentioned earlier, which can be used to do this. So at this stage, the guide will start to look a lot more like the family-friendly versions that Unique usually uses. This, again, will be edited by the expert clinician, another really crucial step. This is similar to the review process that we use for all of our guides. And then it will come back to Unique. We can send it to our member families who have that condition for their testimonies, their tips, their suggestions, hopefully their photographs, and it can become a truly unique guide. So I think that's where we are.
Thank you very much. And of course, just wanted to end this presentation with thanking lots of people who are involved in this. So Anna, Claire, and Sarah from Unique, then Kamal, Tom, Videh from Manchester, and Ruby is somewhere in between because she's actually one of my PhD students, but she had a placement with Unique, or she's currently on a placement with Unique. So she's both with Unique and with Manchester University. There's lots of people involved from Short Hills as well. So thank you, Pawan, but other key people involved are Shivani, who was actually going to be presenting this, but sadly because she cannot be here today with us, but there's lots of other people as well. And then all the clinicians who very kindly volunteered to help us with the current scaling up of the idea. So all their names are there, and I think I can actually see one or two of them in this webinar as well. So that's about it. We've got 10-15 minutes to answer any questions. But as I said at the beginning, this is an ongoing project, and we'll be very grateful for any feedback, any thoughts, any ideas on how to make it better and how to make it more useful for patients and communities around the world. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, all. I'm sure you will all join me in a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. I found that really, really interesting. It's come to my attention that not everyone can see the option in the Q&A. So if you have a question, but you're unable to use the Q&A, please do just put it in the chat and I will monitor both. So the first question that we've had through, and I actually had the same question, was, this is really interesting work. I work in using phenotypes for rare disease diagnosis, and I wonder how flexible the system is for adding in new data. For example, if a new feature is published in relation to the genetic condition.
Great. Probably I can start to answer that question. So thank you, Tiloka. I know Tiloka well, so good to hear from you. So that is definitely one of the directions that we would like to take. So right now we're focusing on generating new guides, but the next step would be to develop a system to update existing guides. So more work will need to be done. And Pawan very nicely explained the different stages and complexities of it. I'm sure updating new guides will bring its own complexities as well. There'll be perhaps two kinds of scenarios one could think of. There might be guides that have been originally generated by a non-AI method. So how do you update those guides? And then there might be guides which are generated through this method where you've actually got the background data in the right format already. So there might be a slightly different system to update those guides. But yeah, that is definitely one of the questions that we want to solve, but we haven't necessarily tackled it so far. Anything, Claire and Pawan, you would like to add to that?
Just to highlight that updating guides is such an important thing to consider, and it's something we're very aware of, because at Unique, one of the main challenges is that balance between providing new guides to families where no information exists, and also that we'd really like to update our guides for those that we already have. But we are, well, with the equivalent of sort of less than 2 people working full time on this, on all of our guides and information project. So it's a kind of an impossible task, really. So I think that updating guides is just as crucial as providing new guides.
And if I were to answer this question maybe a year ago, I would have said, okay, yeah, that's easily doable, but definitely it's a tough one. So it can be done, and that's what AI models will be able to do. And the framework, if you would remember, the first step was uploading all the documents. So let us say today we upload 20 documents, tomorrow we make it 22, or we take away 3 of them. The way the model will work is it will essentially degenerate the entire thing. And once an AI model is trained or they're aware, they can do it in a jiffy for that matter. But again, that is one part of it. The second way to solve this would be take a guide, just add this paper, just that exact piece of information, and do not go to the entire grind. But again, this will take some time to really validate but that's what I would like to just add. So there are 2-3 approaches in mind, but yeah.
Thank you. And Mita asks, this is a really interesting talk. I was wondering how graphs or other formats of data presentations are read. I assume this is by the large language model. So will it be text only, or can it also read the graphs in those papers?
So the new multimodal models can actually read all that, everything. And frankly, the inner workings are pretty, unknown and to any one of us. But now, if you look at a lot of these multimodal models, they're able to read that. The large language models also, they are able to read out text, and based on their coordinates, their positions, the models have done that. And it is still a problem, which is a tough problem. It has not been fully solved. Whatever we might do might work for some time, and then if we try to throw in a new kind of document, it might still just not be able to do that. And it's a tough problem to solve, Mita. So we are hoping that the likes of Google's and Facebook with their billions of dollars will be able to solve this problem for all of us, and we just use those models off the shelf.
Thank you. And Derek says, great project and work, thank you. Can I ask, where do you start? Do you have a strategy on which conditions you would make a start on?
Maybe I can start and Claire might be able to add to it. So for this particular project, it's basically for unique information guide, but actually the framework that's been built can be applied to lots of different scenarios. So I think for the unique information guide, we made a conscious decision that will restrict this to neurodevelopmental disorders and for disorders for which a unique information guide does not exist, and where there is a willing expert who can be trusted to deliver. So there's of course time limit to these projects as well. So Derek, I would say, and again, I know Derek very well, so great to hear from you. We've not talked for a very long time, so that's nice. I would say that if you were to want to take up a project, Derek, we'll definitely prioritize that. How about that? So it's basically that. Now, once this scaling up is done, how do you scale up to the next level rather than just doing 5 or 10 guides? Can we turn it into 50, 100 guides? I think a lot of it still depends on human beings. So as long as there is an expert who is willing to identify the papers, then check the outputs at 2 stages, then definitely we would like to do it. And of course, then you need some funding to do all of this as well. So that kind of goes without saying. Claire, anything you would like to add to that?
I think that covers most of it for this project. Traditionally, we've always sort of obviously targeted conditions where there isn't information available already, and also based on our own membership numbers. We also quite regularly now get approached by some of the other amazing support groups I've mentioned who might represent individual conditions, and we collaborate with them to produce a guide because they often have more families than we do. We've got sort of represent 1,000 different conditions. So often we find that works really well. We've had some amazing collaborations like that. And also things like when Renew syndrome was discovered recently, and I think as Sid knows well, there's more of these RNA sort of non-coding genes. that we're finding are really important. And within a year, we were able to work with the clinicians, the researchers, the support group that was established to produce a unique guide, because it was clear that this was going to be a condition that was going to affect thousands and thousands of people worldwide. And a lot of families would be getting a diagnosis really quickly with no information out there. So we always try to be quite flexible in that way as well, and take on these conditions as they arise.
Thank you. We have a question from Arbor about how will this network with patient groups? And I've noticed we do have a lot of our patient representatives on the call. And I wondered if I could add to that as well. So how will this reach patient groups, but also is there a mechanism for patients to provide feedbacks on the guides as well?
So we have, in some ways, in lots of ways, it's a co-produced project. So it's a joint venture between Unique Manchester Rare Condition Centre and Short Hill. So absolutely, patient groups are at the center of it. We've also discussed this with our MRCC VR Rare PPI group that I mentioned in one of my initial slides. So absolutely, it's been the central reason, the theme for the entire project. Was that the question, or does it mean something else? So how will this network, what does that exactly specify?
Arbor, if you're able to pop in the chat, and we can elaborate on that more. In the meantime, there's a question from Alex about the unit cost per guide created, and how does this compare to the equivalent cost of an expert authored AI guide, non-AI guide?
Yeah, so Alex, you did not miss it because we didn't mention anything about the cost. So yeah, our aim currently was to prove this as a concept and prove this that it can be scaled up. I think when we actually prove this, then maybe the next step would be absolutely to look at the cost. I don't know, Claire, how much does it cost you to produce one guide without AI?
This is something we talk about a lot internally. It's so difficult to say, because if there's a Gene Reviews article, there's not many publications. We have our template. If you've got a clinician who can review it quite quickly for you, it could be, a few days work. But some of our guides take, and I'm not really exaggerating, a year or more. They take a lot of time. And I think what was so lovely at the beginning of the project was with Shivani and Pawan, we sort of went over the process of guide production and gave them a crash course in genetics and what goes into it. And well, they picked it up amazingly quickly. And it's a very, very difficult to say, but it ranges, as I say, from a few days' works to weeks and weeks of our time.
And I think in any of such project, there's a huge amount of cost, relatively speaking, at the start of the process. But once that process is perfected, then hopefully the costs come down. Just by a further example from a clinical side, similar to what Claire just added. So we've been working on Kabuki syndrome clinical management guides for last about 3 or 4 years. And it involves individuals from different countries, about 50 to 55 individuals, expert clinicians from all around the world. And that has resulted in curation of review of about 1,000 peer-reviewed articles and selection of about 150. So if you compare that with clinical management guidelines production, we've done it on a shoestring and really on goodwill of people who have contributed to that project. But if you actually cost it out, which I've done on back of an envelope, it would come up to about £500,000 or dollars, whichever way. So, and I'm not exaggerating. If you actually count the amount of time that people have spent in creating that, that's all without AI, of course. And then we've used the same papers that we've selected to generate a unique information guide, which is admittedly very different from a clinical management consensus guidelines approved by ACMG and AR and Ithaca and all of that. So it is a different thing, but if I compare, it would definitely be a fraction of the cost of what we've invested in terms of. But we've of course benefited from having those many human experts. But I'm just kind of comparing with one of the conditions which I care quite a lot about. I've got a clinic that I run, national clinic for Kabuki syndrome as well. So I know how difficult it can be. But yes, it would be nice to do a proper health economic costing of it as well for that. But again, even to do that, you need money. So just there's no end to it.
Thank you very much. And Arba, thank you for coming back. So sorry, I meant how will patients be able to trust AI-enabled genomic medicine? So I suppose in this instance, it's about the AI-enabled genomic medicine leaflets.
I think Claire should answer this from a patient community perspective.
Yeah, I think just as we've always relied on having expert clinicians and researchers reviewing our guides here, and I hope it was sort of quite clear in the whole project overview, humans are involved at sort of before, during, and after every stage of the project or of producing these guides. So at no stage is it so, oh, the AI's done it, it goes out. There will always be that expert overview.
Thank you. And Ian asks, are there plans to engage regional clinical genetic services to share this project with them as they author a lot of patient information leaflets?
Yeah, absolutely. So in fact, the call for the current project went out internationally, and it was obviously more picked up in our clinical genetic colleagues. So in fact, the list that Claire had on one of the slides has lots of my clinical genetic colleagues from the UK. This project is not complete, but once it's complete, we intend to actually produce a peer-reviewed article based on our experience as well. So we intend to write that paper in next 6 months or so, and hopefully present that at various conferences to which our clinical genetic colleagues would go. So absolutely, we want to disseminate this, but this was just an interim. So if people feel that they've not heard about the project, it's because we've not talked that much about it. But yeah, we do hope to share more information in 2026.
Brilliant, thank you. And I noticed we have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to jump back into the Q&A for those of you who've been posting in there. So there's some feedback here from Swati, who says, in future, it might be helpful to add available therapeutic options to each rare condition. So that's a bit of feedback there for the guides. Thank you for that. And we have another question which reads, when clinicians spot disagreements between the generated guide and their clinical understanding, is there a pathway for sending that feedback?
Yes, is the answer. So the human review, that the expert review that happens, we've built a standardized form to give generic feedback, but it's basically a Word document which can be edited and commented upon, and then those changes are incorporated into the next version of the guide. So absolutely, yeah, that's the whole purpose for having experts review this.
Brilliant, thank you.
Just to jump in quickly, I would say as well that we are more now, not in our older guides, but we are developing or including management recommendations and mentioning any therapies that might be in progress. So that's something that we've actually added in our new template. And yeah, so hopefully that will be covered a bit more in our guides.
Thank you very much. And we are 1 minute to the end. So I'm really sorry to anyone if we didn't get to your questions. You're welcome to email the Genomic AI Network and we can pass it on if there's anything pressing. But thank you so much to our speakers. I will give you another virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a really, really good session, and I appreciate the time that you've spent to come and talk to us today. So thank you.
Very
We'll
much.
see you soon. Thanks everyone for joining and for your questions.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, Poppy. The